Through my appointment to the Joint City-County Planning Group, Mr. Miller, what's the actual name? It's the Joint City-County Task Force, is
Joint
it?
Coordinating Committee for
Joint
the county and the city
Coordinating
of Fort
Committee
Bragg.
for City of Mendocino, City of Fort Bragg, County of Mendocino,
Right.
with respect to the Casper transfer station. It has really been quite an educational experience, and through that whole process of trying to evaluate functions, assign costs, concern that the city has with their management or shared responsibility of that site, I've learned quite a bit over the last, 8-10 months that we've been working on this. So I've learned quite a bit about the function of solid waste in general. And through that process, and I think Mr. Miller does allude to it in his report, bottom of page 3, and then continuing on to page 4, Casper being the largest facility by far of all of the ones in the county that the county has responsibility for, and that cooperational responsibility that we have at the city of Fort Bragg. One issue that arose in your slide presentation is this concept of gate fees increasing and the need in the proposal as it addresses the franchise fees going up, so there's higher curbside costs. Those are clearly issues that affect the public. But already in these lengthy discussions with the city of Fort Bragg, they really already are bringing forward this concept. So I can speak from actual experience that it is very real, that concept about who's paying for what and who's receiving what services is alive and well with that relationship, trying to establish that. So I think that that's a substantive piece that needs to be looked at. But basically through this educational experience, what I've come to learn and have gotten the specifics on to a large extent is the significant degree with which the general fund subsidizes the solid waste function in the county. And so through that process and through the relationship we have with the city of Fort Bragg, this supervisor's become very concerned about that. And I think that we really need to address that issue. So a subsidy to Mr. Ward, a subsidy to solid waste via the general fund, those are still dollars, and they're substantive ones. I think you do have a slide, Mr. Miller, that talks about what it currently is in the general fund dollars that are now going to subsidy. I forget the number, $500,000, $600,000, something like that. I think that 576,692. I don't think that all of us, and I'm not pointing the finger at the executive office or your function or the board of supervisors, but because I think this has a lot of historical pieces to it, and so we won't go backwards. We'll go forwards. I think that we need to do a much better job of educating the public on the true costs of the solid waste function, and we know that they're going up. Mr. Miller has brought numerous documents to our committee meetings because we have to focus on the contractual obligations that are up for renewal. We have to focus on the rising fuel costs. So these are things that, yes, the public knows with respect to their own families, their own expenditures. We all know that. But I don't think that the public understands the degree to which it is impacting our general fund. And so I would say this is one arena where we have to do a much better job of educating the public and taking steps to reduce that number. So my main priority right now is not so much looking at a new proposal, but that we need to look at ways that we're going to drop that number. And it's not going to go down overnight. It can't be down to $100,000 next year. But I would like to see, through public education and the real true cost of what it is to dispose of our waste, that the public really is going to have to step up and take more responsibility. It's that, or the public's going to have to really clearly communicate to us as the decision makers that this is one of their highest priorities for our very limited general fund dollars. These are the very limited discretionary dollars. We all know that they're dropping as we speak. So we need to guard those very carefully. And so if we continue to just do the subsidy to Mr. Ward or to the function run by the county, I don't know that we're doing the best service to the public in kind of not discussing it. So this is one area, and I think there are probably several others, and I hope that this is fully explored through the budget process, that we actually bring forward this issue. I think it's going to tie into our connection to MSWA, or it should. It should tie into our comprehensive way the leadership role the county should take in recycling. How, a lot of this is if we reduce things going to the landfill, we're reducing the actual costs here, and we're reducing the dollars we're talking about. So I think this needs to be a multifaceted approach, but this is a very real issue with the city of Fort Bragg. We're going to be hearing more about it, and I think we're going to need to really address those fees. Now, so I'd say that's the critical issue, because that's the Budget Balancing Act that we have the responsibility for. So that, to me, is paramount and is the foundation. Then comes, well, who is the best provider of these services? And I did read the proposal as one that would certainly consider a subsidy. It was the sentence that Supervisor Delbar read that talked about a subsidy would be considered, and it would be negotiated between the contractor and the division and approved by the Board of Supervisors as needed. So, I think all the functions need to be evaluated. Subsidies are already going to the private sector to conduct these services. I think we need to look at more information. It needs to be comprehensive. But on first glance, I don't see that there are cost efficiencies in privatizing these functions. There might be, but I haven't seen them yet. And I think we need to be very cautious about funneling subsidies to the private sector as we are funneling them to ourselves in a sense. So I think we really need to look at the functions. We need to look at the true cost of these and letting the public know, because I truly don't think the public really knows. They don't know in Covelo, I'm sure, that I think your slide said to $7 per cubic yard of items disposed, the county's paying a cost. The general fund dollars are paying for that. We're doing that at all of our sites. And the smaller, my information from our committee meeting is the smaller the function, the smaller the site, the more the subsidy occurs. Whereas in Casper, being the largest of all of them, there's the least amount of subsidy going on. But yet the city has a very real interest in getting their net cost down to zero, meaning that they need the rates to go up. I think that we need to address this issue countywide, and I think that we're at a critical juncture, and it's very timely with respect to our budget preparations. So, there are a number of things that I don't think are adequately addressed in this conceptual framework, and that is the actual cost of transitioning employees. I think a comparative would be if we talk about the previous county employees that worked for the courts that then had to transition to the state. There was a very complicated and comprehensive transition process that had to take place about their associated benefits, their retirement, workers' compensation. There are a number of things that even with a small group of employees, you need to factor that in. And I think it has to do with very sophisticated financial analysis. You need to have actuarial studies done to actually see what that would be, even for a small pool of employees. Because you need to look at what are the true costs of privatization. You can't lose track of that, and I think this analysis, to no one's fault, it's not comprehensive enough to give us that information. But I would like the board to get back on track with the subsidy in general, and how are we going to, number one, educate the public so we're getting less material to the landfill, and number two, educate them on the true cost of the disposal of that, and come up with a more equitable system for the payment of those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Pinches, I believe you
First of all, in Sonoma County, what they're doing in Sonoma County is they're privatizing the functions of whether it's recycling or the buyback centers or the transfer stations. They're totally privatizing that. Then the landfill monitoring, and they don't just have landfill monitoring, they still got landfills that's open. They're transferred that to the Sonoma County Water Agency, which that's kind of a no-brainer because the Sonoma County Water Agency has a lot of money. What Sonoma County don't have is they don't